Okay, good morning, Bore da. I'll just read through our usual notices before we start properly. I would like to remind you all that this council meeting is being broadcast live over the internet, so we are all on camera. Please be aware you may be visible on screen when people around you are speaking, and please remember to speak clearly into your microphones. This meeting is available to view online now and in the future, whenever and wherever people wish to view it. There is no need, therefore, for any other filming of the meeting to take place. We welcome the use of Welsh language at meetings, but I have had no requests for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. I'd like to welcome everyone attending the meeting and anybody watching the meeting via the webcast, but can I please ask that all mobile phones and other noisy devices be put on silent. If there is an emergency alarm, follow the green signs and go to the ground floor of the Civic Car Park. If we have any motions or amendments during the meeting, I will need them to be clear and preferably in writing before we go to the vote. And as a final thing, I've been said to mention that if anyone's wearing a jacket, you may want to take it off because it's very warm. Okay, so if we move on to item 1 of the agenda is attendance.
Apologies have been received from Councillors Anthony Hunt, Rose Seaborn, David Yowell, Richard Overton and Stuart Evans.
Thank you, members. Do we know of any other absences? Yeah.
Yes, Jason O'Connell, please.
Item 3, declarations of interest.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I'm not aware of any interests that are to be declared today. Thank you.
Item 4, then, can we look at the minutes from the last council meeting on the 25th of June? Are there any issues for accuracy? No. In that case, is anybody happy to move and second that? Okay, can I have a show of hands then? All those who... Thank you. Those confirmed as a true record. Number 5, updates on actions. Yeah. Richard?
Chair, Presiding Member, in the last council, I moved a motion that an additional item be put on the recommendations that the council would contact the local government secretary and the WLGA in relation to the independent members of all council, not just this council, being allowed to sit on committees further to the previous legislation. I should have put the actual motion in front of me. I just wondered if that should be an action, and if it is, I'm prepared to update it. I can update it anyway, depending on your wishes.
Yeah, if you're happy to update us.
Okie doke. Further to that, the Welsh Local Government Association Executive met last Friday, of which the leader of this council, Anthony Hunt, is a member. He raised it with other members at that meeting, and that will then go to the Local Government Association Council, which is open to all representatives of the councils that meet. And the hope, and it's got to be passed by that body because I can no more say hope than that, that we would have a joint statement from all leaders, or the majority of leaders of the WLGA, to go to the Minister. If that isn't the case, we will write as to Ovine Council. So that's the update on that item.
Could the statement come back to full council when it's not, please?
I'm assuming Council have accepted that as an update of actions. It will go on the update of action sheet and it will be updated and struck off when the action's been undertaken. I should have picked it up when the minutes came out and put it on. Apologies for that.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments on item 5 and the actions? Nope. Okay then, move on to item 6, which is petitions. There are no petitions today. Item 7 here, public question time. Again, there's been no public questions. Next item, announcements from Deputy Leader or the Chief Exec. Richard, do you have any announcements?
No, I was going to raise that update of action, but I've already done that. Thank you.
No announcements.
Okay, then, so on to item 9, the Cardiff Capital Region City deal. We have to present the report then. Good morning. This is just a very straightforward report and to advise Council of the change of our representation on the Cardiff Capital Region City Deal Joint Overview and Scrutiny Committee. This change has come about since our council in May when Councillor Preston became a cabinet member and was therefore required to step down from her position on the City Deal Scrutiny meeting. So the changes that we're asked to recommend today are that Councillor Joe Gordon be nominated to represent Torfaen on the committee and Councillor Peter Jones nominated as the deputy. Thank you. Okay. Members, any questions or comments? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Chair. What assurances can be given that Councillor Gordon will actively attend the Cardiff Capital City Deal Joint Overview and Scrutiny Committee, knowing that she has only attended 1 out of the 4 Torfaen County Borough Council's Healthier Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committees? What assurances can be given that she is going to be attended or can attend?
Do you want to turn yours off? I think that's an assurance that Jo will give to use her best endeavours to attend those, and that is also why we have a deputy, so that when Jo can't attend them, she will advise her deputy and he will take the place. That's the whole point of having a subordinate deputy or what have you to do. I'm thinking Peter wants to come in as the deputy.
I can just add to that. I mean, there's been 4 meetings of that scrutiny committee during the last year, and I attended 3 of them. Kelly was the deputy and she attended 1, and we also jointly attended the first meeting. The committee is in its very early stages in terms of the meetings have mainly been about setting out terms of references, etc. They've had a look at some of the issues. It's very early days for a large project, and I can assure the council that although I'm the deputy this year, I'm pretty certain that one of us will be attending those meetings, so the council will be represented, and also the minutes, etc., and the notes of those meetings are publicly available.
Can I just say I don't have any problem at all with Peter being the deputy at all, because his attendance has been impeccable. But I have concerns in regarding Councillor Gordon knowing with the given attendance.
I would just come back in and say it is Rich from a member who has been offered to join a scrutiny committee who hasn't taken that up. As a member who's on various outside bodies, including the Fire and Rescue, newly appointed, and she diligently attended that, other scrutiny committees, and is trying to do a work-life balance. I think it's very rich of you to come in and say that. You've had my assurance that Councillor Gordon is a diligent member. She will have to make decisions of which meetings. There will be times where scrutiny might even clash with the City Deal scrutiny or fire service, and that's a decision made by Councillor Gordon at that time and advised to the leader or myself which committee she's going to attend. But as I said in the preliminary, that's the whole point of having a deputy. If she can't attend, she can. Thank you. And I move the recommendation.
Just a quick question, if I might. I mean, this is a very important scrutiny committee. I just wanted to know if it was definitely a matter of a political appointment or whether sitting on this particular committee might be open to all members.
By convention, it's usually a chair of scrutiny from the committees, from the councils that are members of that, and that's why previously it was Councillor Preston and Councillor Jones. So it can be a chair of committee. We are nominating those two. If anybody, and it's been moved and seconded, if anybody wants to propose a non-Labour group chair of scrutiny, then we put it to the vote.
Sorry, I wasn't talking about chair of scrutiny. I was just talking about this particular scrutiny committee itself.
I thought I'd answered that when I said the councils appoint chairs of scrutiny to that committee. Not just this council, other councils. The representatives of the scrutiny committee of the city region are chairs of are appointed by councils, and it's their chairs of scrutiny committees that are appointed.
Thank you very much for that. That was the point I'm making. It doesn't have to be. So maybe could we suggest that the council has a look at appointing maybe in future years and when it becomes vacant again across the entire council?
No, the Labour group will put its suggestions forward, and any other member of the council who wishes to put their people forward can do that. We might nominate in the future somebody else, but at the moment these are the two we nominate.
I've got Councillor Haynes and then Councillor Jones.
Just really to pick up on what you said, Richard, I'm pretty disappointed that you've used that, the lack of the rule and the law that allows independent councillors that stand alone to not have seats on committees, and using that to beat us with. I'm disappointed if you use that. The reason that we've taken this stance is that so not only independent councillors on this council, but also all others throughout Wales and you know, the rest of the country get a fair and legal. So moving forward, please don't use that to beat us until the rules are changed.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes. I was following the independence lead by singling out a member on the attendance of one committee. That individual sits on various committees and has very good attendance. To sit on one is a bit rich from somebody who does not take the opportunity to sit on when offered scrutiny committees. That's the point I was making. I am, and I've taken it on from the last council to champion my bit strong word, but to take forward the representation. It does the Labour group no favour to do so, but I think in the interest of fairness, I proposed that motion last time, so my credentials on that are open and clear for all to see. But I take your point. I only follow from the lead that has been given by others.
Can I just remind everybody that, you know, let's not get personal and, yeah, just keep it professional. Okay, Councillor Jones.
Just picking up on what Councillor Jones said, the membership of the committee, it's across council and it's across party in terms of there'll be members from other committees, will be from other parties. It's not Labour dominated, the actual cross scrutiny committee. And the other issue, which I found very strange when we first attended, all men were appointed to that committee, which I thought was abysmal. So we've redressed that balance slightly by putting Joe Gordon as the nomination for this council and me as the deputy. There are now, I believe, there will be 2 ladies and about 7 men on that committee. So the balance still isn't right, but it's better.
Councillor Haynes.
Then moving on from that, thank you, Peter. How is that vacancy advertised to the rest of council then, if other than waiting for it to come to full council? Because then that would give us the opportunity into looking into what the role would involve.
Top of my head answer, sorry. It isn't advertised, but the papers for council go out a week before, which would indicate the vacancy. And as I've said to Nick in my answer, as with other things, we do it at full council when we go for leader and deputy leader. If other members of any group or independents wish to appoint somebody, they can put a nomination forward to that. But in terms of advertising, no is the short answer. That's as far as I know, I'm afraid.
Maybe then perhaps just generally an email could go out to either group leaders or something to say that there is a vacancy for any nominations before the report is written. Just a suggestion. I'm aware you don't have to accept that.
I don't see why we can't do that.
Sorry. Sorry, it doesn't like me. Okay, as it's been moved and seconded then, can we have a show of hands, those in favour? Anybody against? Any abstentions? Thank you, members. That's been agreed. Okay, the next item is the... Oh, I've gone too far now. Is the ICT Code of Conduct. But as Council will be imminently moving to Office 365 and the associated ICT hardware refresh, the ICT protocol report has been temporarily withdrawn. This is to ensure that all aspects of these changes can be reflected within the ICT protocol document. An updated protocol and report will be presented to Council in the autumn. Okay. So then we're moving on to item 11, which is the annual report to Council on the effectiveness of social services by the Chief Officer. So I'll ask Keith to present the report.
Good morning, members. It's that time of year again where I'm required to bring this report to you. The report's a requirement of the statutory role of the Director of Social Services, and it's written with a template, so you will, those of you who've had the opportunity to read it will note there is some repetition in it. The report's a reflective report looking back over 2018-19, but also does reference some items going forward in 1920. The report is the view of the Director of Social Services, and it's my professional view, taking in a lot of evidence that comes across my desk, surveys, etc. And it's used to go to the inspectorate, who will then make a judgment on if anything they want to come and look at in the next year or so. 1819 saw widespread media attention, I think, on the pressures being faced by social services across England and Wales, and we've really had to work hard to continue to run sustainable quality services and recruit and retain staff. Our services demonstrated transformation and modernisation, and I think that can be seen in terms of the way that the adult services have transformed into patch-based teams and the effectiveness that we've seen from that. We've continued to actively promote people's independence by providing up-to-date information and advice. And our approach is born on the need to think more creatively and manage demand more effectively. In essence, all departments in the Council are being expected to do more with less, and social services is no exception to that. I think our approach has been showing demonstrable results, particularly in relation to some improved outcomes. And one of the ones I would particularly cite is our performance in delayed transfers of care, which have come down considerably. Members won't know, but it's an area I've taken a particular interest in. I even spent some time in the hospital to see what blockages and how we could unpack them, and they've come down significantly. I think those who deal with the elderly people in the community, and many of you will know that often time spent in hospital can cause deterioration in people's conditions. So one of our big pushes is to get people out of hospital and to keep them at home as much as we can. In terms of children's services, you know, the last year, and as in many years, we've seen the number of children coming into the system rising. Children, many with very complex needs, and we've, you know, developed good working relationships with health, adult services and colleagues in housing, and also, of course, we have an excellent working relationship with our own education department. We've seen an increase in very young children come into the system, and particularly some large sibling groups, which are a real problem in terms of accommodating them, because obviously when we get a group of children, we try in every effort to keep those children together rather than splitting them up, because we recognise that is, you know, a key thing to their ongoing support. Bear with me, I'm not feeling too brilliant this morning. So how will we shape in our services? Well, we do that by getting a lot of customer feedback. We actively seek that feedback, but we also get it through the assessment and care planning and review process. We do surveys in both adults and children. So we get that, and we try to use that to inform the way we develop the service going forward. We've done that particularly in some of the information we got on carers, and if those of you who've read the report see that we've made some significant developments for carers and for people being cared for. We recognise that the role of carers is pivotal in keeping people in their own homes. And I think if we didn't have carers, you know, the cost of the service would probably quadruple. I did have some figures at one point. I don't need to dig them out again, but I think we recognise that the carers save the council millions of pounds. Our strategy has been to keep people in the community wherever possible, and we've got a well-developed programme with the Ayr and Bevan Health Board called Care Closer to Home. We have a good, well-developed community resource team, and we have a model of Home First, which is a new model that we brought in last year, where we've got a 7-day service working in the hospitals so that we can either keep people out when they present in A&E, or that we can get them out very quickly back to their own home. That is in part, of course, because if people are unable to get into hospital for surgery and so on, then the outcome for them is not good. There are some people who are always going to need residential and nursing care. We work very closely with that sector to try and keep up high standards, and any that begin to fall down, we do have a process called escalating concerns, where we put them on increased monitoring. I have to say that, you know, that works well, and in the main we have a very good working relationship with the private providers in our area. We've also got and developed the use of social prescribing, which is done in GP surgeries, which is a way of not seeing the GP but giving a different way. So people present with GP for all sorts of things, financial problems. We're trying to work with the GPs to minimise that, because most of you will know that they have an average 15 minutes per patient, which is a very short time. And if they've got people turning up regarding financial issues and housing issues, then we can find other ways of doing that. Over the last year, we've also further developed our community connectors, and I was pleased to say I went out with them a few weeks ago, and it was amazing to see the work that they do, keeping people in the community and connecting them to services. So in many ways, it's an early intervention service, and they actually, you know, keep people, they get them involved in groups and so on, which keeps, you know, because many of the people we hear from say they're lonely and isolated, and if we can get them linked in with groups, then that's another way of doing it. We've got a number of housing-related services, drop-in and outreach, and, you know, again, they aim to work in a preventative way. Obviously, one of our key areas of responsibility is safeguarding, and we have 2 regional boards, a Children's Safeguarding Board and an Adult Safeguarding Board. You know, these boards oversee the sort of safeguarding in the region, and obviously is represented by heads of service from the 5 local authorities. I think our record is generally good, but I would never say never. You know, accidents and mistakes can happen, but at any one time, you know, we've got a whole programme, and I suppose in many ways, children's services, that is what they do. Their main aim is to go out and safeguard children. As of today, we've got 109 children on the Child Protection Register. That figure goes up and down because it's a very dynamic process, because many of those children will work with those families and hopefully they will remain at home. However, if, you know, we do see no change, or that indeed the concerns grow, then inevitably we have to look after those children. We've really further developed our early intervention. As I referenced earlier, the adults patch-based teams have really seen some better connection with the communities, and I think through that, people coming in, knowing what we do, where to get advice and assistance, we're able to signpost people. We've also got a good programme in children's services, and it's part of the T22 programme, and I think we know that needs further development. We couldn't do our job without our workforce, and I've got to say they are our greatest asset. We have a high level of stability and retention in Torvine, and I think this is through good support, through regular supervision, and working on a learning culture rather than a blame. We know that in the domiciliary market there is a particular problem, and we are working with our colleagues across the region to see what we can do in terms of that. But I'm pleased to say that we've also been working with Coleg Gwent, and we are developing a career college consortium which will hopefully attract younger people to the workforce, or returners, and we're hoping that will really kick off next year. It's the only one that we know of in Wales, if not in the United Kingdom, so I think it's something we're particularly proud of. But of course, proof is in the pudding how many young people or returners that we're able to attract to the job. social care costs the council an awful lot of money. We have a budget in over 44 million, and it is constantly under pressure. And the council does protect us as much as it possibly can. But children's services continues to be a concern. It's not unique to Torvine, and we are working, as I said, very closely with colleagues on a lack reduction strategy as part of the T22 programme. But I think, as I've said here many times, and I've said before, the children we look after need to be looked after, and it would be remiss of us not to do it. So in conclusion, I think once again we've seen demand rising across all parts of the service, and I think we've risen to the challenge. Our role in safeguarding children and adults continues to be a priority. The Council remains firmly committed to keeping the service and user at the heart of everything we do, and the success of our way of working is evident in the number of people we support within the diverse community of Torvine. We've embedded the Social Services and Wellbeing Act by ensuring that the practice and strengths-based assessments and positive risk-taking underpins our way of working. We ask the question to service users now, what matters to you, rather than writing prescriptions for them, as was with the way some years gone by. So we try to give people what they need, rather than what others feel they want. This sometimes brings us into conflict with other agencies, with families, but I think it is the right way forward. Whilst people have got capacity, they should be able to make their own decisions. We know we need to improve, and we know we have to work in partnership in order to do that. As I said earlier, we're very aware that the social care sector is becoming increasingly fragile, and we need to work closely in our partnership with providers. If we don't have the home carers, we can't get people out of hospital. So it's as simple as that. Anyway, finally, I hope the report will prompt some discussion. I'm happy to try and answer any questions, and if anybody wants to reference any particular point in the report, I have a copy in front of me, so I'll endeavour to answer them. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, I've got Sue first.
Thank you for an excellent report. Also, we must consider and thank all the adults out there that's bringing children into homes. Those persons becoming foster carers. With foster carers today, there is so much demand, and with last year, where we were advertising for foster parents, I believe a lot more came forward. And so thank you. Special thanks from me to everybody within your team for the extreme groundwork that they do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. By way of a number, we've got 191 mainstream carers in Torvine. That's unusual in the region, and for whatever reason, we do seem to be able to recruit local carers, which is great.
Okay, Faye next.
Sorry, thanks. I'd just like to reiterate what Sue said, because I think we do an amazing job with social services in Torvine, considering the terrible pressures that's on modern day life and in a county like ours. But I would just like to ask two questions, if possible. I think we do a great job with early intervention, but to me, the icing on the cake, because of our high levels of deprivation, would be family centres, patch-based, in those areas where they're needed the most, and I think they would work well perhaps in some schools as well. And I think that's a place where we could do massive multi-agency work and support those families who are out there who are very fragile, who might in the long run help us to have better parenting skills, better support within the community. And that was my first question. Is there any money at all in the budget, or any way that we could enable some family centres to be born and to thrive in certain deprived communities? That was the one. Do you want me to do the second as well? And the second was, I also think we do a great job patchwork with older and vulnerable people. And we do have some brilliant older people's residential settings. And I know that when we were having problems with one of them on my patch, I requested a social worker, and one came to the beaches and started to work with them because they're such a great community. I just wonder, could we have more of that, perhaps patch-based social workers going in and being part of those communities, perhaps once or twice a week? Thank you.
I'd say the first one, the idea of family centres. We have one family centre in Torvine, based in Cwmbran, and I think through the T22 programme, we are recognising that we do need to work better in an early intervention way in the communities. We are working on a pilot that will be in the north of the borough, but it isn't going to necessarily be buildings-based. It could be school-based, you know, but I think, you know, we believe in an outreach-type model, and I think many service users are very, very reluctant to come into social care buildings because, you know, understandably, they think we might take their children off them. So in the past, you know, we had arrangements with Action for Children. It is something that Jason O'Brien and I have talked about, and we would maybe look to do something in partnership with, again, Action for Children or another organisation, because they're more likely to be able to reach out to families in the community. Because whatever the myth is, you know, we keep an awful lot of children in the community. We don't automatically, you know, I don't wake up every morning and think, how many children can I bring into care today? Absolutely opposite is how many can we keep at home? But, you know, so it is something we're looking at, but I think in terms of the council, we probably haven't got any capital allocated to it, but that doesn't mean that we can't explore other avenues. There's a lot of money coming in through the Integrated Care Fund, and we may be able to tap into some of that. So it's something we're thinking about, but it's early days. And, you know, I know you've raised it with me before, and, you know, we'll see what we do. In terms of adult services, we have moved to a patch-based, you know, I think we've got 6 teams now, and hopefully they are reaching out to those services. So if we need them to go into any particular home, then, you know, we'd be happy to do that. But again, you know, it's all based on, we've got a specific resource. Their first priority has got to be to get out, to assess people, and to put in the appropriate care to keep them in the community. But it's not something we wouldn't consider. Of course, yeah.
Okay, thank you. It's very good to hear. I think we have got a job of work around people's perception of social services, and I just wonder if eventually patch-based children's centres or family centres might help with that.
Okay, I've got Colette next. On page 92, Keith, you make 2 references there to staffing. It does seem to be painting a very worrying picture. I just wondered what we're able to do about it. It's about university graduates and recruitment to domiciliary care. And the second point I'd like to raise, as a member of the corporate parenting panel, I would like to thank the team for all the work they do with our looked after children. And could you remind members of how many children we are responsible for looking after at this moment? Thanks.
Well, that's an easy one because I get the figures every week, and sadly we're looking after 417 children at the moment, which is a high number. But as I said earlier, all of those children need to be looked after. Sorry, in terms of in terms of recruitment into social work posts, we don't really have a problem. We advertise and we recruit. We've recently done that. We are very concerned, though, about the domiciliary care workforce, and we've got a number of work streams going on then, and we've also been able to draw down quite a considerable amount of money from ICF to do some pilot work within the area. So, you know, we're looking at all different ways of incentivising, getting people in, you know, pool cars, lots of different things. But the reality is people don't see it as a particularly nice job. And, of course, home care today is very different to the way it was 20 years ago. Much of it is around giving personal care, and it isn't for everybody. But we constantly chip away at it. And as I say, our own home care team, I think we're fully staffed now, but for the first time ever we had a bit of a delay in getting people in because people tend to want to work for the council. I think, you know, we're just trying to think of different strategies to deal with it. But at the moment, it's not a crisis, but I think we're doing a lot of work upstream to prevent that crisis. You know, we're working again with Social Care Wales about a positive recruitment campaign, you know, so that it, you know, we can cover lots of aspects. So I think it's multifaceted. I said I referenced the Care College Consortium. If we can get some young people in to say, look, there is a career. I mean, I worked in home care when I was training, you know, many years ago. And so there is a career. I'm now the chief officer. You know, and I became a social worker, I then became a senior social worker, then a service manager, you know, so and, you know, we go out to the careers and we hear parents, oh, you don't want to do that, there's no career. Yes, there is. You know, Jill Prattlett and I are good examples of that, I think, and Jason. You know, but again, it's a myth. It is a real myth. And, you know, you're competing with people paying more money in supermarkets. And that's, so we really have got to look at the sort of the remuneration of that part of the workforce. Because, you know, if you can earn more working in one of the supermarkets on the till, that's where you'll head. But I don't necessarily think you'll get the level of satisfaction. That's a long answer, Councillor Thomas. But, yeah.
Okay, Mandy next.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Keith for the report and for all the team for their hard work throughout the year. We're all aware of the pressures and demands we face in social care, in particular children's services. The number of looked after children has increased, which also includes the increase in number of very young children and sibling groups becoming looked after as a result of neglect and abuse. All the children that come into our care need to be there, and as an authority, we need to ensure that these children are safeguarded from harm or neglect. I'd also like to thank all the foster carers that we have. We've got a fantastic amount of foster carers, and we're quite lucky in the fact that we're not struggling to get any more in, where some authorities do struggle. So I'd like to thank all the foster carers. The Early Intervention Prevention Strategy has embedded a preventative agenda which has strengthened and introduced new projects which have provided families with report at the right place at the right time, which has meant families and children have benefited from intensive intervention programmes, and these have been aimed at preventing children from coming into care or placement breakdown. We have children with high complex needs, and they're supported by experienced providers providing specialist services, but these care packages do come at high cost, and they continue to have a substantial impact on our social care budget. The challenge we face moving on in the next financial year is the increasing demand in looked after children numbers with a reducing budget, but we will continue to work with partners to find packages of care, ensuring that they are of good quality to achieve the best outcomes for our children within the T22 plan as well. I'm also pleased as Dementia Champion to see all the hard work that's gone on throughout the borough and to see dementia awareness continue to grow. It's good to see so many groups, organisations, businesses and in particular schools signing up to become dementia friends and dementia friendly communities. Recently the social care team at Canalside received their dementia friendly accreditation last week, so they're working towards becoming sort of dementia friends. So I'd just like to say congratulations, take the opportunity. So again, thank you Keith for all you and that team do. Richard?
I keep forgetting the microphone. Can I echo the remarks that people have made in thanking the teams? I think it is a very important thing to do, Keith and his senior management team and all of social care, because it has been highlighted in this report, the financial difficulties and the actual number of social workers and the caseload and the team and the caseload they deliver for us. And I do personally wish to thank them for the services they provide for this council and indeed our community. I would have thanked Mandy and David for their stewardship of the department. I know they go out and about at the chalk face is probably the wrong expression, that would be education, but they visit the teams, see what the difficulties are, see what the good side of it is at all. We are recognised within Gwent and even in Welsh Government as a key player, a key partner, the go-to council. We will make a difference, we will look at a whole system and not just say, well, this is social care, because what we do has a knock-on effect on the Health Board and other people. Things do go wrong, as pointed out in this report, but I think our strength there is that we do listen and we do learn from where things go wrong, and we make sure we've got a better service as a result of it. Part of that listening has been the patch-based teams in adult care, which is being used as an exemplar throughout Wales and beyond. And as Keith hinted in one of his remarks, we no longer deal with people and just say, well, here's a menu of services you could have. Revolutionary, we listen to their needs and try and get bespoke packages for those individual needs. Now that could be something as simple as a befriending service, because that's what the individual needs is lonely, because they're lonely and isolated, or it could be more complex. But rather than just say, well, you can go to Tynant for a day, you can go here for a day, there for a day, I think we're really improving the making a difference for adults. We've mentioned children. Faye, thank you for your comments and you are a fine champion for that, and I know you'll not let that matter lie, and Keith will and the team will continually look at it. And I think if we can mirror what we've done in adults into children in terms of those family centres, I think that will be fantastic when we have the opportunity to do so. So can I, on behalf of the whole Council, thank the Social Services team and thank Keith for this open and frank report, and look forward to 12 months and seeing the improvement in 12 months' time.
Okay, Janet next.
Thank you. Thank Keith and all the team for
Veronica?
Thank you. Thank you, Keith, for a very full report. I do have a query and a concern which I became aware of earlier this year, and that's with children, looked after children who have come into our area. I understand that there isn't a direct link between social services outside the area, and I wonder, in that case, what also happens to our children, who are increasingly fewer in number, who are going outside of the area. In the instance I'm thinking of, the children were actually going to foster parents who are private foster parents in Torvine, and there had been very little link-up with our local communities, including education, which did create problems. And I do feel, in terms of partnership working, we should be doing more with other social services when it comes to these type of placements. So I'd appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Legally, any authority that places in another authority is supposed to inform us. So if we, for example, place a child in Monmouth, Newport, or outside of the area completely, we would inform that local authority that that is what we were doing and how we were going to provide our care and support plan. Sadly, because I think of the demand on placements, sometimes authorities, scrabbling around, they find something and they plonk them in without any discussion or notification. And of course, then that has an impact on the services that we may need to provide, but obviously education places as well. But it is something we could robustly go back to those authorities and say, you should inform us. But we can't actually stop them doing it. That's the problem. There is no issue, if you like, of ordinary residents in terms of children. And obviously, sometimes children arrive in the borough, from out of nowhere. I think some authorities, in the past have given people travel warrants to go away. We had a case a few years ago where 5 children arrived in the borough. We were very concerned about these children, and we were tipped off they were on the move again. So I think as an authority we did the right thing and we swooped in and looked after those children. They're some of the most malnourished, terrible situation those children were in. The girls had suffered sexual abuse. And I think, in terms of we did the right thing, we didn't turn a blind eye, which we could have done. We could have simply let them go. And I think none of us would want that, would we? We would want them. These are young, innocent children that deserve to be protected. And I would hate to think what the conscience of the senior managers in other authorities are if that's their behaviour, because that wouldn't be the way we would work in Torvine. So it has an impact, but there's very little we can do about it. Private agencies can recruit foster carers in any area, and they do. And of course there's an undersupply of foster carers, so people will place in other authorities if they've got nothing else local. So, but it's something I know you had a conversation with Jason about, and it's something we are mindful of. We don't want more children coming in. We're struggling to look after our own, aren't we? We don't need any more, But it's something that is beyond our control.
Thank you for such a frank response.
Peter?
Thank you, President Officer. A couple of points. First of all, congratulations, Keith, on an excellent report. And I was really encouraged by Richard's comments, particularly about the people-centred approach. I thought that was excellent. My first question is, at constituency level, Keith, we have a lot of interaction with Bronavon. How are the arrangements working with social services in Bronavon from your perspective, just in broad terms? And my second question is around the 2 children's homes that opened over the last 2 years, and one of them is in my ward in Ton Road. Could you give us an indication of how you feel those are working, please?
In terms of the relationship with Bronavon, I think it's beginning to improve. You know, we had a very good recent roundtable discussion with them, and I think that was very helpful. They do a lot of preventative work in the community as well, but I think it is about us also building relationships with them. It isn't a one-way road. So, you know, I feel, if you'd asked me that 2 years ago or even 18 months ago, I would have said the relationship wasn't particularly good. But I have to say that in terms of social services perspective and our housing, you know, because they are our main housing provider, the relationship is improving. In terms of the children's homes in the borough, again, I think we've said before, they don't require planning permission. It's very, very difficult. I have to say it's gone very quiet because I was hearing an awful lot about them. So I can only assume that things have settled down a little bit. But to be honest, Peter, I don't know, and I'll find out. But it's not on my radar at the moment. So it usually is. If there's a lot of noise kicking off, it's on my desk, and it hasn't been for some months. But I think one of the tactics we used the children's home for Torvine children. And that was what we were trying to do, so we could at least control who was going in there. But, you know, again, it's a market thing. If they've got a bed, they'll try and fill it with children from wherever.
I can just come back to that. That was what I was trying to get at as well. Is it's not just children from our borough that go into those homes, is it?
No, they can actively promote them anywhere in the United Kingdom, and you know, I think they haven't done that. I think we've tried to work with them because they knew there was a lot of feeling in the community about them just opening them up. But you know, they open them up without any notice to us. You know, they don't need it. They don't need planning permission because they're small, unregistered homes. Oh, sorry, they have to be registered, but they're small, so they don't need to go through full planning applications. And it's something, you know, we've talked to the regulators about the problems it causes us. You know, but in the same breath, do we place in children's homes in other areas? Sometimes we do, because that's all we've got. So, you know, you're right to be concerned, and it is something I'll keep an eye on. I'll find out what's going on at the moment, because, as I say, usually if there's a lot of noise, it sits on my desk.
Just from my perspective, the only noise at the moment that I'm picking up is issues around parking in my constituency.
Okay.
Yeah, on that basis, Peter, I think the two that was, one's in my ward, one's in your ward. The one in my ward at the moment sits vacant, and I think we have one child placed in your ward at the moment. So that's where we are.
Okay, Dave Daniels.
I'm going to repeat a lot of what people have said, but I think it bears repeating, to be honest with you, because I think it's a good report, and I think there's a lot to commend in it, including Keith and our staff. I don't know whether Keith made reference to preliminary feedback from Care Inspectorate Wales. He wouldn't do because he's a modest person, but we recently had feedback on quite an extensive audit of our adult services in Torvine, and that feedback was very good. I've got the notes here in front of me. There's been a lot of mention around our staff, and they were singled out as particularly our strength as a borough, being motivated, dynamic, and that they embrace change, that there's a real culture of advocacy on behalf of the individuals that they care for. So, you know, I think it bears out that staff are our strength, and, you know, it's for that reason that Mandy and I have been going out and shadowing some of them just to see what they do, and, you know, just pitching it here that it's open to all of you. You've got patch-based teams for adult services anyway in your area, and it may even be in your ward and you may not realise it. So it's worth maybe introducing yourselves to them. So I'll see if I can get an email round so that you know where they are and you can make contact with them, because it really is worth making contact with them and shadowing them if possible, because I was out with the assisted technologies team yesterday. This is one of many that we've got planned through August recess. I was very impressed with what they had to offer to our clients, our constituents. over and above what some, and it's not that sort of game, but over and above what some other boroughs do. And this is purely because we continue to prioritise social services, both adult and child, year in, year out, and this is us taking this decision. So I think it's something to be proud of. It's a good report, and yeah, I commend it to everyone, hopefully, and you'll do too.
Okay, Ronnie Burnett.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just to say thank you, Keith, for the report. I'm sure we all know in our wards we all have our problems, and for what the resource you have to work with. And I know quite a few social workers and how stressful their job is, and we're so lucky to have them. And with a couple of cases I know of, which I know as members we can't get involved because it's such a delicate situation, and we have to explain to families that we've got to stand back from it, but we do monitor what's going on. It's just to thank you and your team for what you do and make our children safe within Torfaen.
Okay, got Dave Thomas now.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Keith, for your report. You're quite clearly a highly regarded officer and a real asset to the council. But I have got a question on the report, if that's okay. You did say there was 417 children in care in Torfaen, and I was just wondering, it's a high number. Is there a particular reason in Torfaen for this? And I suppose the real question is why?
Well, I wish I had the answer to that, to be quite honest. I think it's multifaceted. We do have a high number. We're a bit of an outlier. We know that. We've had a university in last year or the year before, IPC, to look at it, and what they said was the number of children we had in care was appropriate. We were doing everything right because, you know, I, as the director, am concerned about that number and the cost to the council. You know, it costs a lot of money. But cost aside, if we have to look after those children, we do. I think in my role as head of children's services, or deputy, I also used to read all of the agency decision-making reports, which is basically the decision when children should go for adoption. And I think probably 9 out of 10 of them were on the basis of drug and alcohol misuse. And, you know, it's right across the borough. And I think particularly worrying in certain parts of the borough. But unless we can turn those people round, you know, then inevitably the children have got to be removed and placed for adoption or long-term care. So there is no easy solution. I've talked to colleague directors across the region. You know, we're doing some work through T22, having a good look at it, because, you know, we know that going forward, it's not good for children to be looked after. You know, they're safe, but actually they would prefer to be with their families. But you can't leave them with their families if their families are not looking after them. So our first port of call is always to try and improve that arrangement. But I don't know, there are patches where it's worse than others, and I think we are going to work in one area particularly, where we know we pull a lot of children from. We have all those stats from every borough, where you know, every ward where they come from. But there is no easy answer, and I think, you know, academics we talk to in the University of Cardiff, they can't come up with a solution or an answer for this. But you know, I understand your question, because it's a question I asked myself: why Torfaen? Why us? You know. And I think, you know, austerity's had an impact. There's no two ways about that. You only need to walk down the street and you can see the poverty. You know, so I think, you know, we've got people in the borough, or children in the borough, third generation of unemployment. You know, there's no hope. And I think unless, you know, we can improve employment prospects, improve people's financial situation. You know, if people are under significant financial pressure, and, you know, they can't afford the food, worrying about the bills, that's when they snap with their children. And I'm sure that is part of it. You know, and therefore we then have to step in. You know, and of course, legally, if somebody has assaulted a child, that is a criminal offence. Now, I'm not talking about a slap on the bottom or a tap on the hand. I'm talking about, you know, significant bruising. You know, we're not an authority that would remove for a minor thing. You know, that's not what we do. But it is a big number. Most of the cases go through court, so 94% of the children we looked after have met a threshold of significant harm. That's a huge number. And that goes, goes through court. If we don't take them to court quick enough, we get into trouble for not going sooner. So it's a very fine balance. When I was a young social worker, a long time ago, we would have worked to keep children in the community and take some more balanced risk. Society doesn't allow that now. If I'm absolutely honest, it's the law, and that is a real problem. So we might have a case where we think, no, we can keep this child at home. We'll put in, regular visiting, sometimes daily visiting. But actually, if we then go to court in 12 weeks' time and say, the judge will say, look, where's your chronology? Why didn't you bring it then? We make the decision for you. So in some ways, they're removing the professional autonomy that we would have as managers within the department. And it is something that we've talked across the 22 authorities about in Wales, the role of the judiciary. Now, it's not all them, and they have improved practice, I don't have any doubt about that. But the timescales for getting to court now, 26 weeks to conclude. And that puts our staff under immense pressure. And I'm amazed, because I walk the floors, that's one of the things I do, and the resilience they've got in terms of just coming in the next day and getting on with it, and thank God they do, So we do, you'd think in that environment we'd lose staff, but we don't, they stay. So I don't know if I answered your question, Councillor Tommy, but there is no... I wish there was a recipe. Do I wish there was? And Nigel certainly wishes there was, because it is a big problem for the council, no two ways about that, yeah.
Hey, Stuart.
I put that one on. Yeah, funny enough, I had a social worker around the house the other day doing a care assessment for my family, and thank you very much, because I can be right in those circumstances. I've got 2 people in the house with autism. It could be anybody in my ward, anyone in Torvine. And after your last meeting with you said get assessment done, and it was interesting because what do you want was the question. And I mean, carers, it's a difficult question for carers because they want everything and you can't give them everything. The last meeting I had with Keith was, we ain't got the resources, voluntary sector, etc. So I took your point on that, and we got that assessment after a while. And there's a lot of carers in the borough, and what do they want? I mean, you haven't got everything, have you, Keith? That's the point you made earlier. And what carers want and what they do, I'm very mindful of the fact that most of the carers who talk to in my ward, and I'm one of them, are isolated in their caring role. They've got DWP, etc., etc. And you haven't got a magic wand, I know that. And this report is pretty good on that. And you've got the carers sent, and we haven't got a lot of resources. You're spreading them as thin as you can and getting bang for the bucks. I mean, what do you want, Keith? That's the question I was going to ask you, because your social worker asked me that question. What could you do for carers? Interesting question.
I think within the resource we've got, we're doing quite a lot for carers. So, as you said, we've just drawn down some money through ICF to buy the carers centre in Torvine. We've developed a whole menu of other things we can do, but resource is an issue, isn't it? And I think I've got to say, and I'm saying it in this, I thank the council for the support I've had in terms of this, because my colleague directors in other authorities don't have that. But we can only do the best with what we've got. There's not going to be any significant growth. We are trying to pull in money from regional monies wherever possible, and we'll continue to do that. But we do the best we can with what we've got, and it is a challenge every day.
Right. Thank you. Keith, I just want to say on behalf of the Conservative Group, thanks ever so much, and to thank your staff. I don't want to repeat everything that's already been said, but we do appreciate everything you do. But whilst we are talking about looked after children, I can assure members in my capacity as chair of the corporate parenting panel, we do scrutinise at every meeting the number of children we have as looked after, and we do ask searching questions, and in fact we act as a sort of scrutiny committee to say, why have we got this number? And I think it's important to emphasise that at a recent CSSIW inspection, it was confirmed that Torvine did not have one child as a looked after child who didn't need to be looked after. So I can give members reassurance that the corporate parenting panel regularly scrutinises the numbers of looked after children we have as a council. Okay? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to echo, thank you, Keith. I mean, I think as a council we do lots and lots of important things, but social services is somewhere where, you know, people really need help, and if we didn't support that, you know, where else could they turn? And I think it's so important that we have staff who care and are committed. Anyway, so I've got no more speakers lined up, so the recommendations are to note the report and advise for publication. So can I have a mover and seconder? Brilliant. Can I show of hands, all those in favour? Thank you. Anybody against? Abstentions? Thank you, members. Then those recommendations have been agreed.
Can I just do a bit of an advertisement? There's many people in the chamber today who probably haven't done the safeguarding training, and can I really urge you to do this? You know, we can either do it in groups. I know Mandy's written out, but we will eventually get some sort of inspection on this, and I would hate it be, you know, that Torvine members, because you are so supportive, you know, I really do mean that, but I wouldn't like a report to say that Torvine members haven't done the training. So many of you have, but there's still a few who haven't. So if we can help in any way to run groups or whatever, we will get, but I'd like to say we could almost get 100% of members through the training. So, forgive the impertinence, but I really would value it if you could try and do that for yourselves and the council.
Okay, we've got item 12 then. This is the annual scrutiny report. I think Leanne's going to...
Chair, can I just put apologies in for Councillor Shepherd? She's had to go off to a family funeral.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to hand over to Leanne then to present the report.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. It gives me great pleasure to present the annual overview and scrutiny report for 2018-19. It's good practice that all councils produce an annual report of their overview and scrutiny arrangements for the previous year, which has been set out within Appendix 1 of your report. May I just briefly highlight and draw to your attention a few key points from the report as follows. Over the past year, all scrutiny committees have delivered quite an extensive work programme across a range of council services. This has required a collective effort from members, officers of the council, external witnesses and members of the public to ensure that robust decisions are being made in the right way and are fully considerate of the wider environment. We have also received a positive report from the Welsh Audit Office, which has recognised the good scrutiny practice that takes place within Torvine. May I stress that scrutiny is seen in Torvine as having equal importance to the Executive, and I hope this report will demonstrate that all members can have a real input into the decision-making process of the Council. May I now pass you over to the scrutiny chairs, who I believe would like to say a few words on the report.
Okay, thank you. I'm not going to repeat what's in my chair's summary. I've just a couple of points to make. I'd just like to reiterate the recognition of the work put in by the scrutiny officers and democratic services. Without them, we wouldn't function as a scrutiny body. I'd like to recognise the way we worked across party in my scrutiny committee. I've already thanked Alan Williams, who was our independent member, for his sterling work during the year. It was remiss of me not to thank Ron Burnett for his excellent support on the Green Meadow Task and Finish group. Don't get used to it with praise from me, Ron, but he's not doing that. but I do need to recognise the hard work that Ron put in on that. Ron, I'm going to repeat this because it's going to be a rare thing. Well, Ron, what I said, Ron, I'm going to repeat it as you're in the room. It was remiss of me in my summary report not to recognise the excellent support you gave me on the Green Meadow Task and Finish group. And I did say, don't get used to praise from me, Ron, but on this occasion I was very grateful. And I'll just finish because I was advised to be very brief. I'm very hopeful that the cross-party approach that we've had over the last 2 years while I've been chair will continue into this next year. Thank you.
Yeah, thank Thank you very much. Thanks for presenting the report, Leanne. As I've mentioned in my chair's summary, I'd like to thank all of the members of Safer Community Scrutiny for their excellent attendance and their input last year. The average attendance for the committee was 80%, and I think that clearly demonstrates members' interest in the items on the agenda. The committee worked really well together, and I had an excellent year chairing that committee. We held the executive to account. We were informing policy development and reviewing policies and strategies. I'd also like to thank all of the expert witnesses and the invitees who attended and contributed to our meetings, and also the support from the entire scrutiny team. Moving forward, I'd like to wish Councillor Janet Jones every success in chairing the renamed committee for the coming year. Thank you.
Okay, Stuart.
I'm following Peter Jones on thanking everybody. I'm being brief on this as well. Obviously, I've got a committee that all of you at backbenchers can come to, and you do. And we've got a very different format in the main, because everybody contributes, and I thank you very much for doing that, because it's normally very robust. I'd like to thank the improvement officers and Democratic Service people there, because it might be 2.5 hours, 3 hours in that meeting. It's very hard work, and I think everybody that goes there gets something out of it. Obviously, we've had budget, we've had, I'm looking at here saying, and the improvement plan, and this year we've already had the first instalment of this year's, and I think most people found that quite elucidating. It raises a lot of the time more questions than answers, and that is as such. I also like to thank the officers, because they all have to be there as well. I think this format is probably drawing out a lot more questions than sitting in this chamber. The other thing that was worth mentioning, which I thought was interesting, was the local draft toilet strategy, and I'm interested to see where we're going with that. Members did seem to get quite a lot, but well engaged with that, but I won't go into any more of that. The other one that's mentioned here, the other one I remember is the Environment Act, and on our forward plan we will be obviously having the thing that was in the last meeting coming forward. So I'd like to thank everybody for taking part in this, because I think make the point it's your meeting. I take Peter's point, it's political process but non-party political, and that is such a, it's scrutiny, and what answers you get out of it is what you get out of it, and not what the chair or anybody else puts in. And the important thing about scrutiny, and it says at the bottom, it's a valued critical friend, and it's about you being critical and informing the process. And the answers that they go to executive and back to the officers is the important thing. They only get as good a view as you're prepared to put in. Thank you very much for being good scrutineers. Thank you.
And then my own one. I would again like to thank everybody on the committee and everybody attended, especially as it was my first year. I was quite nervous. It was quite a big difference sitting down there from here. But yeah, again, thank you for all the support. I think I really enjoyed looking at education in a broader sense, the things that underpin it. So, for example, we looked at the childcare offer, how we engage with our young people, and things that you know might not be considered directly education, but obviously have a big impact on what our students achieve. So, yeah, that's all I want to say.
Just to finish off, on behalf of my colleagues, can I thank all members, past and present, for their contributions towards Overview and Scrutiny Committee. We're always looking to improve our scrutiny function further, and we'll continue to support members with the necessary training and support where you feel necessary. Thank you.
Okay then, members, any questions or comments? Stuart? Rob?
Thank you, Chair. Following political balance again, why is there vacant seats on 3 of the committees, and these vacancies have gone over a period of 5 meetings, 3 meetings and 4 meetings, if you like. what is being done to actually fill these vacant seats, knowing that they are governed by political balance.
Are you referring to the co-optees?
No, sorry. Under the healthcare communities, there's a vacant seat, which has been vacant for 3 meetings. The learner communities, there's been a vacant seat for 4 meetings. And there's one more. Bear with me. And the cleaner communities, there's been a vacant seat for 5 meetings.
I don't know really, if I'm honest. I would assume it would be up for the relevant political parties to put names forward for you to sit on those committees. It wouldn't be up to us.
But I'm just concerned is that there's been vacancies on these overview and scrutiny committees for such a long period of time, but basically as a non-group member, I would have given political balance, the change of political balance, I would have gone on a couple of them, but again, due to political balance and legislation, I can't. Simple as that. Thank you.
And again, this report refers to 1819 anyway. I think moving forward, I think we're pretty much filled the vacancies. I'm only aware, in particular on my committee, we have got vacancies at the moment, but they relate to co-optees.
Would it help if we just looked at why there were the vacancies and wrote to members with that answer, and then that will address your question? Does that help?
Anybody else? No. Okay, then if we look at the recommendations then, I have a mover and seconder. Yeah. Okay then, show of hands, all those in favour. Those against? Any abstentions? No, thank you members, that's agreed. Okay, we move on to item 13, motions on notice. We don't have any, so we go straight on to item 14, which is members' question time. I think first question we've got is from Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Chair. Question was put to Councillor Hunt, but obviously Councillor Hunt is away at the moment, so this is directed to obviously the Deputy Leader. As a democratically elected councillor representing the residents of Upper Cumbrian Ward, I have a major issue with being termed and denoted as a non-aligned councillor. As Torvine County Borough Council accepts equality and rejects all forms of discrimination, is there still a place for such wording as non-aligned to be used, or can the Council eradicate its use from within the Chamber and indeed the workplace? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Kemp. It's probably appropriate I answer it because I think it was myself and the Chief Executive who actually used the phrase in the council meeting. Naturally, I'm sorry that you have a major issue with the term non-aligned. That said, it seemed to cause you no concern at the meeting itself, where you had the opportunity to challenge its use, and I'm not aware of you approaching me or indeed the monitoring officer about the use of the word. The term is accurate. As an independent member, you are not aligned with any other group in this council. In fact, you and other independent members have repeatedly advised of being advantaged to your status. I have reviewed the part of the council meeting. The expression used by myself and the Chief Executive was said with no more expression than any other word. Indeed, there was more concern when I accidentally referred to you as the independent group. Many democratically elected councillors revel in the expression non-aligned and indeed have been listed as independent non-aligned councillors I will not list all such, but Wrexham, Swansea, Norfolk, the Highlands, Rochdale, Stoke, Lincolnshire and Portsmouth gives a fair geographic spread. This council has an excellent record of equalities, and the only abuse I see today is you using it to frame this question, I'm afraid.
Okay, Councillor Kemp, do you have a supplementary question?
I do. As not all democratically elected councillors affiliate themselves to a political party, with the leader, deputy leader, write to the Welsh Government and the Welsh Local Government Association, requesting that the wording non-aligned councillor should no longer be used within the political spectrum.
I'm tempted just to say no. For the reasons I've just outlined, it's in the English language, it isn't a derogatory term, it's not listed by the Human Rights Commissioner as a derogatory term, and I've just given you a sample list. There are more of councils that use them. I hope you have noted today in earlier conversations I have made the deliberate attempt of saying independent. I will try not to use non-aligned, but you know what I'm like with names. I will slip into it now and again, but it is not to be meant as degrading to yourself.
Okay, Councillor Kemp, do you have a second question?
Yes. For Torfaen County Borough Council to be successful, it needs to be positively challenged through the use of good and thorough governance principles. In order to achieve this, I believe there needs to be an effective opposition in place. As leader of the council, or deputy leader of the council, do you believe such an effective opposition exists?
Thank you again, Councillor Kemp. I certainly agree with the first part of your question. There should be positive challenge, but I believe that should be by all members, executive members in their portfolio and cabinet, and all members throughout various mechanisms of the council. One such is scrutiny. I'm not going to make a cheap political point, but as Councillor Haynes said in her remarks as former scrutiny chair, they have the ability to shape and comment on policy and make changes and what have you. So all members, I think, should play a part of that, not just the opposition. As to the existence of such an opposition, I'm not going to enter that territory, thank you very much. I believe that is for non-majority group members, so that's everybody not in the Labour group, to reflect on their capabilities and their challenge, and then the residents of Torfaen at the next council elections as to whether it's been effective.
Okay, Councillor Kemp, do you have a supplementary question?
I've changed words on that too. Oh, sorry.
Out of the 94 members' questions which have been asked as part of full council since June 2017, 49 of which have been asked by myself, only 2 have been asked by the leader of the largest majority group, an independent group, and 0 has been asked by the leader of the Conservatives and Unionist Party. As leader or deputy leader of the council, do you believe Torfaen County Borough Council has an effective opposition?
I don't think the measure of who asks questions, because you could look at the quality of those questions, and that's all I'll say on that matter. You could ask of the quality of those questions. In previous administrations, there were certain members who asked question after question, and the relevance of those, I think at the time I used the expression grandstanding, and I genuinely believe that's what those former members did. So if you were to score on opposition then, those 2 individuals would score highly. Whether those 2 individuals were effective, they're no longer with us, so their residents didn't think so. As to the veracity of the leader of the largest opposition group and the Conservative group, I know both. You've just heard a recommendation by one scrutiny chair on the ability of the one in scrutiny committee, and I certainly, when Ray was chair of healthier scrutiny, he was, I have to say, probably one of the best scrutiny chairs we've ever had. So measuring on questions alone, I don't think is an appropriate measure.
Okay, question 3, Councillor Elizabeth Haynes.
Thank you. My question really is, How many civil parking enforcement penalty charge notices have been issued between the 1st of July and the 14th of July inclusive, given a breakdown of the streets and wards they were issued in?
I found this question a little confusing because, as you know, as Chair of Safer Scrutiny, one of the recommendations which was stated in your statement earlier for the scrutiny review was that we'd have a grace period. So in answer 0, we've only given warnings in those 2 weeks.
Thank you for that. I was wondering if that was the case and if there were, in that fortnight, if there were any major problems that were encountered. I know that we'd requested a zero tolerance but a grace period. But I'm wondering, in that fortnight, was there a big problem that was encountered, or was there something that, how many, did you have any notices at all?
We gave out 150 warnings, but I very much agreed, as you know, when I came to the scrutiny committee, that giving a grace period, especially for something so new, because, we've had a culture for potentially decades, according to some, where it hasn't been enforced at all. So you need to have a bedding-in period for the civil enforcement. But yeah, it's been a case of advice and guidance for the 2 weeks. And obviously now people will start to see more of a difference, unfortunately, in terms of they will get active fines. But then it is quite a simple remedy to that. Don't park where you're not supposed to. Not that I'm aware of. Sorry if I didn't make that clear.
Okay, Councillor Slade next.
Thank you, Chair. Would the Executive Member be so kind as to describe the process we follow to encourage rough sleepers back into formal accommodation, including a description of what practical measures we are able to offer them to support this process?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Councillor Slade. I've got it written down because it goes into quite some depth, so just bear with me. Everyone who presents as homeless is entitled to have their needs assessed in the form of a Section 62 assessment. This assessment will determine what duty, if any, is owed by the local authority. This assessment also highlights other areas of need where support might be required and requested, and will allow us to complete a person-centred housing plan for that individual. In the event that someone is presented as homeless previously and presents again with the same circumstances, we do not have a legal duty to open another case. However, we would always give advice and repeat any offer of appropriate support services. As you've requested more in-depth details of the practical measures we take to support rough sleepers, I'll now elaborate on those measures for both new and repeat presentations. Where a new rough sleeper is referred in and isn't known to us, an ICF, an initial contact form and Section 62 assessment is completed, and should that individual present as street homeless, they would fall into a Section 73 duty, and we would work with them to help them find suitable accommodation as soon as possible. Where a Section 68 accommodation duty is triggered, we refer to temporary accommodation and refer on to support services such as our financial inclusion team and the Welsh Church Fund to provide help with furniture and other household essentials. Not all applicants meet Section 68 duty, and the Housing Solutions Officer remains the decision maker on this. Section 68 is only offered where an individual has a potential priority need. Since late last year, we've been piloting a specialised rough sleeper programme with the Caerphilly-based charity Cornerstone. This pilot is funded out of our Supporting People grant and was a result of our homeless team identifying a specific need for intensive support for some incredibly complex individuals. We refer to all rough sleepers to Cornerstone, who will confirm the individual's homelessness and rough sleeper status and provide the individual with expert support and assistance. The Supporting People programme also funds a number of other services which we would draw on to support the individual if that need was identified. Amongst those services we have the Vulnerable Male Scheme, which a good proportion of rough sleepers tend to be, and crisis support. We offer everyone financial assistance in the form of rent in advance and a referral into a bond scheme which is aimed to help an individual get accepted into private rented accommodation. We discuss rehousing options through social housing and priority banding, and we advise and work with the individual on anything that could prevent them from moving on, for example, former tenant arrears. If there are any additional complex needs, such as substance abuse, we refer to GDAS, Gwent Drug and Alcohol Service, and where appropriate, we refer into supported housing. Where we've had a referral for someone who's sleeping rough and who has previously been known to us, we do not have a duty to open a new case if the circumstances for this presentation and their previous presentation are the same. However, we still offer the same advice and support to that individual. In fact, our team go over and above to support all rough sleepers, irrespective of their status, because with many, it can often be a matter of patience and stamina. Rough sleepers often have complex needs, some of which may not always be evident or obvious to members of the public, but which may make supporting them particularly challenging for support services. Nonetheless, we persist because it's the right thing to do. Not everyone is ready to accept the help that we offer for a range of reasons, and all we can do is be there and ready for when they are. And in advance of this meeting, I actually met with the Chief Executive Officer for Cornerstone just to talk in more depth about some of our harder to help rough sleepers, because I'm conscious that we've had a number of conversations about a rough sleeper in your ward, and how we should approach them. And he was very kind to give me a quote on their approach and their ethos as an organisation. So it'll extend my answer a little bit, but I'll read it out anyway. So this is from Andrew Clark, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Cornerstone. On the issue of some of our more complex and therefore more challenging to support rough sleepers, I recently spoke to, I'm just reading what I said, when working with those who are rough sleeping, we must realise and adapt to a number of issues and situations. We always approach someone in a dignified manner, be it in a shop doorway, a tent, sat under a blanket. We must realise from a very basic point of view that we are interacting with someone in their perceived home. We are on their patch. We must be respectful of their space and their worldly belongings. Whether we approve of their lifestyle is not up for debate. When a person has their home taken away from them, there is little power or threat that society can do to make their situation worse, and being in judgment of an individual is not only a pointless exercise, but a waste of time and energy in attempting to engage with an individual on some level. People lose their homes for many reasons. We believe that everyone has a right to a home and do all we can alongside our partners within the local authority to address issues around rough sleeping, which is very successful in Torfaen. However, we must be motivated for the right reasons. Some rough sleepers feel so let down by our services, or their situation that they do not trust that they can come out the other end. It is our job as professionals and as a society to ensure that when someone does not feel ready, we empower them to take the opportunity. It is possible that someone has a history of failed tenancies. It is these individuals that we must show great respect and encouragement to, because it's this group that often become entrenched rough sleepers that we see in all areas of the country. It is our job to engage with these individuals in a careful way, to check their welfare, to ensure they're safe, and to prepare them for the risk of trying once again in a home of their own. The fear for professionals is that when an individual becomes too risk-averse to try again, it's this group that we need to never stop trying to encourage to succeed. So this is very much the approach we take here in Torfaen. These complex individuals are not going to simply disappear, and their circumstances rarely, if ever, improve by themselves. So we have to be there to support them whenever we can. So back to my original answer. Both our homelessness and housing strategies have been through scrutiny, as we've discussed earlier in the meeting. However, I would be more than happy to organise a members' seminar towards the latter part of the year, in advance of the winter, to go into greater detail about our support for rough sleepers. This seminar could provide an opportunity to members to provide any additional thoughts or ideas they may have to help us help people. And as I've mentioned, there is dialogue that we've had on rough sleeper in your ward. However, I'd appreciate it if you didn't go into any detail. I don't know if you plan to in your supplementary. If you don't, no problem. Oh, that's okay. Well, that's the end of my answer then.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Slade?
I do. Thank you very much for such a comprehensive answer. Following the publication of the report entitled Ending Rough Sleeping, What Works, the Welsh Assembly Government has published its own Rough Sleeping Action Plan. And the action plan states that for many people, Housing First offers the effective solution to their situation, as evidenced consistently through research. But the report also encourages the application of Housing First principles supported by assertive outreach. Could the executive member confirm that the processes and practical measures that he's described so far constitute a Housing First approach to tackling the problem? And can he describe and explain to us what is meant by assertive outreach? Thank you.
Well, it's a supplementary. No forward advance notice, so in that respect, no, I can't. I can't on this spot, so I'll have to write to you after this meeting if that's okay, and more than happy to meet with you and discuss. Same with any other members. So yeah, I hope that's been an action, and I'll come back to you.
Okay, Councillor O'Connell isn't here, so I'm going to ask Conservative members if he's given any advice to go forward or not.
Yes, thank you. I'm quite happy to ask these questions on behalf of Councillor O'Connell, but can I just refer back to a previous question where I was singled out? Can I just state that I regularly have meetings with the leader, Councillor Hunt, and the deputy leader, Councillor Clark, and I put forward the comments of the Conservative group in a robust manner in the private surroundings, and I welcome and applaud the fact that the leader actually encourages members to go and speak to them privately, so I appreciate that, and for that reason I've never felt the need to grandstand in this chamber. So I'll now go on and ask question 5 on behalf of Councillor O'Connell. Can the leader confirm what specific activities he has undertaken, I don't say in the past month, but recently, that aids in increasing employment or attracting new businesses to Torvine?
In the absence of Councillor O'Connor, I thought I'd got off lightly, but there you go. Luckily, here's one I prepared earlier. Thank you for the question, Councillor Mills, which I'm happy to answer for Councillor Hunt. As a council, we want to see our business base flourish. I strongly believe that Torvine is an attractive place to do business, and Councillor Hunt and I work tirelessly in support of our officers to shout about the benefits of our borough to new start-ups and indeed inward investors. This month, our economic development team has had a diverse range of new business inquiries, from app developers to food manufacturers, motorbike accessories to cleaning products. We also meet with our local homegrown companies, companies which make up the majority of our local economy, companies like Goss Engineering, who Councillor Hunt met with earlier this month even. We do this so that we can raise their profile, but also so that we can listen and understand their economic challenges which they are currently facing. Indeed, Councillor Hunt's next Argus column will be featuring such companies within Torvine. I'm sure we await with bated eyes. Can you have bated eyes? I don't know, not bated breath. Anyway, in a similar vein, I have attended the Business Forum and the recently held Meet the Neighbours, which was co-hosted with Blaenau Gwent. Both events are excellent networking and promotion events, and keeping the local pound in the local area and stretching it out to neighbouring authorities. I've also attended the Torvine Enterprise Forum. We know that one of those challenges for our local businesses is the recruitment of skilled apprentices. Earlier this month, Councillor Hunt worked with our Strategic Economic Forum to coordinate a bid by the PSB to the Foundational Economy Challenge Fund on this issue. To attract business, we need space to do this, and the leader and I have been actively engaged in the local development plan process and looking at our current and future need for development as well as housing land. Many of you in the room attended the members' seminar yesterday where you were able to input your views on that as well. Both Councillor Hunt and myself also believe strongly that we need to nurture the next generation of entrepreneurs to create the jobs of the future in Torvine. We are both proud to have supported the annual Enterprise Week, which brought together local businesses and our schools to create new and innovative products. And I'd like to thank all who contributed to that, the businesses, the school, Green Meadow Farm for offering prizes, as well as Torvine Leisure Trust. The young people made over £1,000, and Councillor Hunt was proud to present the awards of part of this week. Thank you.
Okay, is there supplementary?
I don't have a supplementary, but if I can just say a huge thank you to the leader and the deputy leader and all members who work so hard to try and bring new businesses to Torvine. So I'll go on to question number 6, and if I may. Can the leader confirm what work has been undertaken since the member seminar in May to secure the future of Green Meadow Farm?
You may remember that it was agreed that we would look at the 7 recommendations and that would come forward to a Cabinet report. It is hoped that that report will be taken in the autumn. At the present moment, the 7 recommendations are, and I've lost the place in my sheet of paper, are currently being dealt with as a detailed impact and assessment and then to assign costings. Once that's done, it will come to a Cabinet paper in the autumn.
Okay, supplementary.
No, thank you.
Brilliant. Last one then. I think it's the last one, yeah. Councillor David Thomas.
Thanks, Chair. At the meeting at the Safer Community Scrutiny, now renamed Prosperous, the executive member explained that the recommendation to implement a computer-based system for highways maintenance was not accepted and that a paper-based system would remain. How is this decision compatible with the Council adopting a greener, paperless agenda?
Good question. Thank you for your question, and thank you for the committee and the work that they undertook relating to our highways maintenance service. For clarity, from the question, some might think the system is purely paper-based, which it is not. Although paper is used during the process, my officers utilise a number of computer-based systems to inform the prioritisation of capital works and bring that information together in databases. I'm sure most of you here will be aware of my passionate environmental views and my own paperless status, even though someone has put a piece of paper next to me. It happens every week. But I'm paperless and I have been since 2012. However, I'm not completely paperless. I do have a notebook that I take around with me on occasion, and this allows me to be more effective and, I don't know, reactive. So sometimes a little bit of paper, just a little bit, is okay. I seek to reduce the use of paper wherever possible, but it needs to be planned and managed so not to impede our work as a council. And officers have explored how other councils carry out their assessments. However, their systems are broadly similar to ours, as stated in the recommendations supplied to Safer Scrutiny on the 24th of October 2018. As part of the T22 changes, this will pick up momentum. And of course, naturally, I will be driving that forward with some enthusiasm. So that's my answer.
Okay, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I do have a supplementary. The recently distributed Chief Officer's report on the list of road resurfacing schemes lists 6 different sets of data that are collated to determine which road schemes are a priority to be resurfaced. How can we be sure that this list is complied consistently and objectively if we aren't using a relational database containing all the requisite data?
Another good question. I don't think that you can just say computer says no or computer says yes. I think we employ officers who are there's one question, the 2 people here that are talking, and it's unfortunately you're not allowed to get involved. It is important to value the officers that we employ. They're highly skilled, they're highly experienced, and they're more objective than a computer can be. So that they are employed to do that job, and we should trust that. If there was any reason that you can give me that their decision-making or processes are faulty or inaccurate, then obviously I would explore that. But I've been given no reason to think that their decision-making is inaccurate. We did have a really good debate when I was invited to scrutiny about our highways asset management plan, which the new plan has now been adopted by Cabinet. And lots of those points came out. But if ever you want to discuss it further outside of the council, my door is always open. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, members. That's the end of question time. We go on to item 15, the Cabinet decisions from the 9th of July. Any questions or comments on them? No, in that case, I'll be happy to note them. We'll move in seconds. Okay, can I have a show of hands, those in favour? Anybody against? And any abstentions? Okay, thank you, members. Item 16 then, date and time of the next meeting. It will be the 24th of September. So I call the meeting closed and wish you all a happy recess.